Imagine stepping into your backyard, where old boots bloom with golden chrysanthemums, pine cones glow like tiny lanterns, and forgotten branches rise into whimsical arches that whisper of hidden fairy worlds. Picture a garden where every scrap of junk, tires, jars, broken wood, doesn't remind you of trash, but of timeless magic. This is not just gardening, it's turning ordinary into extraordinary. Welcome to Archon Aesthetic Studio, the place where trash transforms into treasure and simple scraps become magical corners of your garden. If you love ideas that mix rustic charm with fairy magic, you're in the right place. We share new inspirations every single week, so don't forget to subscribe and join our growing community. And while you're here, tell me, where are you watching this from today? I'd love to know where our little garden of ideas is reaching. One, whimsical branch arches. Close your eyes and imagine walking down a garden path where two branches bend toward each other, forming a quiet archway. Their twisted lines and rough textures frame the sky like nature's own cathedral, humble yet sacred. Each twig carries the memory of seasons past, storms weathered, winds survived, now rising again as a gentle gateway to another world. The air feels lighter beneath this arch, as if the garden itself is holding its breath, inviting you to step closer. Sunlight slips through the gaps, scattering golden beams on moss and soil, while birds weave their melodies above. It is no longer just wood and bark. It has become a threshold, a moment of wonder captured in the simplest of forms. Such arches remind us that beauty rarely comes from perfection, but from patience, resilience, and the quiet grace of nature's leftovers. In every crooked branch, there is a story waiting to be retold, transformed into something timeless. And just beyond this arch, another treasure awaits, ready to reveal how scraps and fragments can bloom into rustic magic. Two, pinecone fairy lanterns. Imagine the quiet glow of a lantern, not crafted from metal or glass, but born from the humble pinecone. Its scales, once scattered across the forest floor, now hold the soft shimmer of light, tiny embers glowing like whispers of forgotten stories. At dusk, when the garden begins to exhale the warmth of the day, these lanterns awaken, turning shadows into golden patterns across moss and stone. Each pinecone feels alive with memory, its form shaped by time, by rain, by sun. To cradle a flicker of light within it is to honor both its resilience and its fragility. Together with jars or simple string lights, they transform into fireflies that never fade, guiding your steps through a garden that suddenly feels enchanted. In their gentle illumination, there's a sense of welcome, like the soft hands of nature leading you deeper into its heart. Here, trash is forgotten, scraps are reborn, and the night itself becomes a canvas painted with rustic sparks. And just as these lanterns reveal the magic of twilight, the next idea uncovers how even rough moss and bark can cradle life in the most unexpected ways. Three, moss and bark planters. Picture a planter not of ceramic or plastic, but of moss and bark, the forest's quiet skin, gathered and reshaped into a vessel of life. The rough bark holds the soft moss like a frame around velvet, a harmony of textures that feels both raw and tender. Set in the garden, these planters seem less like objects and more like living sculptures, as if nature itself decided to craft a home for flowers. Each touch of moss carries the coolness of shade, the memory of rain, and the silence of woodland paths. The bark, weathered and scarred, tells its own story of endurance, holding the weight of time within its lines. Together, they embrace soil and roots, cradling blooms that rise like unexpected songs from forgotten scraps. To see a simple bark shell and moss cushion transform into a planter is to witness the poetry of reuse, where what was cast aside becomes the stage for new beginnings. In every detail, there's a reminder. The garden thrives not on perfection, but on the patient layering of texture, story, and soul. And just as moss softens bark into beauty, the next idea reveals how even an old boot can overflow with surprising life. Four boot planters overflowing with chrysanthemums. Imagine an old pair of boots, scuffed from years of walking, carrying stories of paths once traveled. Left forgotten at the back of a closet, they find new life in the garden. From their weathered leather rises a burst of chrysanthemums, golden, crimson, and amber, spilling over like laughter breaking free from silence. There's something profoundly poetic in this rebirth. Boots once meant for journeys now rooted in stillness, cradling blossoms instead of footsteps. Their creases and scratches become part of the design, a rustic frame that holds the season's brightest flames. The flowers sway gently, as if dancing to a song the boots have always known, a melody of resilience and renewal. Placed along a pathway or near a quiet corner, they invite smiles and memories. Each bloom becomes a reminder that even the most ordinary, worn-out things can hold extraordinary beauty when seen with new eyes. These boot planters tell us that nothing is ever truly finished. It just changes form, carrying its history into a fresh chapter of magic. And as the boots overflow with life, the next creation transforms something even larger, stacking what was once trash into a rustic symbol of abundance. Giant pumpkins made from tires. Five tire pumpkins for the garden. From the most unlikely material, old, worn-out tires, emerges a symbol of abundance. Imagine a stack of circles painted in glowing shades of orange and brown, suddenly transformed into a giant pumpkin resting proudly in the heart of your garden. At first glance, it feels playful, even whimsical, as though a fairy tale has quietly spilled into reality. The rough rubber, once rolling endlessly on roads, now sits rooted in the soil, reborn as a sculpture of harvest. Its curves echo the shape of nature's bounty, yet its story whispers of reinvention. What once carried weight now carries wonder. Children laugh at the sight, flowers climb around its base, and by dusk, lanterns set inside its hollow glow like a secret hearth. There is something powerful in this transformation. The idea that even the heaviest, most forgotten scraps can become the heart of celebration. Each tire, instead of being discarded, now tells a tale of creativity and joy, radiating warmth in every season. And just as the stacked tires bloom into a symbol of rustic abundance, The next idea takes us back to simplicity. Weathered would reborn as rustic signage, pointing the way into gardens filled with magic. Six, rustic pallet signage. Sometimes the simplest pieces speak the loudest. Picture a few weathered planks, once part of a forgotten pallet, now standing upright as a signpost in the garden. The grain of the wood, cracked and aged by rain and sun, becomes the perfect canvas for hand-painted words, welcome, fairy path, or perhaps simply home. There's a warmth in these signs that no polished store-bought marker can match. Each stroke of paint feels personal, a whisper of the gardener's own heart etched into wood. The edges are imperfect, but within those imperfections lies character, a rustic charm that feels honest and timeless. As sunlight grazes across its surface, shadows fall into the grooves, making the words glow with quiet dignity. Placed among flowers, or guiding a path toward a hidden corner, the pallet sign becomes more than just decoration. It's an invitation, a gesture of belonging, a reminder that the garden isn't merely a place of plants, but of stories and souls. And as these wooden boards point the way, the next idea shows us how even glass bottles and jars can guide light into magical corners of the night. Seven, bottle and jar candle holders. At twilight, when the garden begins to blur into shadows, glass bottles and jars awaken with gentle light. Imagine a row of them lining the path, each one glowing softly, as if a collection of captured fireflies had chosen to rest within. Their surfaces shimmer with patterns of leaves or pressed flowers, turning ordinary glass into lanterns of quiet wonder. There is a delicate poetry in this glow. The bottles, once empty and forgotten, now hold not just candles but moments, each flicker carrying warmth into the cool evening air. The glass reflects the garden back to itself, multiplying petals and branches into shimmering fragments of gold. Placed on stone steps, hung from branches, or gathered around a rustic table, they do more than light the way. They create atmosphere, a space where conversations linger longer, where silence feels softer, where every breath carries the intimacy of light against darkness. What was once discard becomes illumination, a reminder that beauty often hides in the overlooked. And as these glowing jars brighten the night, the next idea wraps the day in rustic charm. Pots and scarecrows dressed in burlap, whispering of harvest and fairy tales. Eight, burlap-wrapped pots and fairy scarecrows. Imagine an old sackcloth, rough and humble, once used to carry grain or potatoes. Wrapped gently around a garden pot, tied with twine, it becomes something new, an embrace of rustic simplicity. The fabric breathes with texture, softening the hard lines of clay or plastic, turning ordinary containers into accents that feel timeless. Flowers spill over the edges, their colors glowing brighter against the earthy brown of burlap. Nearby, a tiny scarecrow stands watch, not to frighten birds, but to charm the eyes. Dressed in patched fabric, perhaps with a playful flannel shirt or a straw hat, it leans slightly, as though smiling at the blossoms it guards. In this small form, the Scarecrow feels more like a fairy's companion than a field sentinel, adding a whimsical heartbeat to the garden. Together, the burlap pots and fairy scarecrows tell a story of reinvention. They remind us that beauty doesn't demand perfection. It only asks for imagination and kindness in reuse. What was once utilitarian becomes poetic, a bridge between the past and present, the simple and the magical. And as burlap and twine bring warmth to pots, the next idea gathers abundance. Baskets brimming with gourds, twigs, and flowers, overflowing with rustic harvest charm. Nine, basket filled with gourds, twigs, and flowers. Picture a simple woven basket, once used for carrying harvest from the fields. Now, placed gently in the garden, it brims with gourds of every shape, twigs twisted like rustic ribbons, and blossoms spilling as though the earth itself had overfilled her arms with gifts. The basket rests on stone or grass, not as decoration alone, but as a reminder of abundance, of how even small collections can feel like a celebration. Each gourd carries its own personality. Striped, round, or curved in whimsical forms, they sit among branches that frame them like strokes of an artist's brush. Flowers weave themselves into the arrangement, their colors lifting the roughness of wood and rind into something joyous and alive. Sunlight touches the basket, drawing out golden threads from its weave, making the whole creation glow as if kissed by autumn warmth, yet timeless in its rustic appeal. This humble composition speaks of togetherness, of meals shared and gardens tended with care. It tells us that beauty does not always stand tall. It sometimes rests low, gathered quietly into the arms of what was once ordinary. And as this basket overflows with natural magic, the next idea turns to circles of another kind. Old bicycle wheels spun into wreaths that guide the seasons into bloom. Bike wheel wreaths. From the remnants of motion comes a circle of stillness. Imagine an old bicycle wheel, its spokes once spinning tirelessly down city streets, now resting against a garden wall, reborn as a wreath. Twined with branches, draped in blossoms, and tied with rustic twine, it carries the memory of movement while offering a new kind of pause. The circle has always been a symbol of cycles, of seasons, of stories that return to where they began. Here, in the garden, the wheel becomes more than scrap metal. It is a frame for nature's art, a canvas where flowers bloom not by chance, but by intention. Each petal, each leaf arranged upon it, turns the old into a mandala of renewal. As sunlight passes through the spokes, shadows scatter across the ground, weaving patterns that shift with every breeze. It feels both playful and sacred, something you could stumble upon in a fairy tale garden, pointing the way toward hidden magic. This wreath whispers that nothing truly ends. Even what once carried us away can guide us home again, transformed by hands that see possibility. And as the wheel completes its circle, the next idea bridges paths in miniature form, driftwood shaped into tiny arches where imagination finds its way. Driftwood fairy bridges. Imagine a tiny bridge arching gracefully across a bed of pebbles or a stream no wider than your hand. Made from driftwood, twisted, weathered, and worn smooth by water, it feels as though it has been carried here by time itself, placed gently into the garden to mark a passage between worlds. Each curve of the wood tells a story, of tides that shaped it, of rivers that once pulled it along, of winds that sculpted its surface. Now, reassembled as a fairy bridge, it becomes a pathway not for footsteps, but for imagination. One can almost picture small beings crossing in the moonlight, lanterns in hand, vanishing into the whispers of moss and ivy. The driftwood's rugged texture contrasts with the softness of moss below, creating a harmony of opposites, strength and fragility, permanence and play. It turns an overlooked scrap into a symbol of journey and transformation, a bridge not just in the garden, but between memory and possibility. Placed within a miniature corner or beside a pond, the bridge invites curiosity, urging us to pause and wonder. And as this bridge carries the imagination across, the next idea leads us along paths edged with stone and pine cones, guiding footsteps with rustic beauty. "12. Stone and pinecone path edges." Paths are more than lines through the garden. They are invitations. Imagine walking barefoot along a rustic walkway, where each side is framed not by concrete or brick, but by the simple rhythm of stones and pine cones. The stones, sturdy and enduring, mark the way with strength, while the pine cones nestle between them like quiet companions, softening the path with woodland charm. Every stone tells of permanence, of the earth's ancient patience. Each pine cone carries the story of forests, of seeds once cradled within. Together, they create a border that feels less like a barrier and more like a gentle guide, leading your steps as if the garden itself were taking your hand. As sunlight falls, the edges cast playful shadows, patterns of rough and round, of hard and delicate. A simple walk becomes something more, an act of grounding, of reconnecting with textures that speak of time and renewal. What once seemed like scraps underfoot are now lines of poetry etched into the soil, proof that beauty often lies in the smallest details. And as these pine cones and stones define the path, the next idea reveals how even glass bottles, once discarded, can flow again, this time as water features shimmering with life. "13. Glass bottle water features." Water has always carried magic, and in the garden it becomes a voice, soft, constant, and calming. Now imagine this voice flowing not from marble fountains or carved stone, but from simple glass bottles, once discarded, now reborn as shimmering vessels of life. Lined along a wall or gathered in a cluster, the bottles tilt gently, letting streams of water escape from their mouths. In the sunlight, each droplet becomes a prism, scattering flecks of gold and green across leaves and soil. The bottles, with their subtle hues of emerald, amber, or clear crystal, glow as though they hold not water, but captured fragments of sky. The sound is delicate, like whispers between friends, a rhythm that soothes the heart while nourishing the earth below. What once carried nothing more than forgotten drinks now carries serenity, a reminder that beauty can emerge when we let the ordinary flow into the extraordinary. Children pause to watch, birds draw near, and the garden feels alive with movement and stillness all at once. This is not waste. It is wonder reimagined. And as bottles pour their song into the soil, the next idea rests gently between trees and flowers. Fabric transformed into hammocks, swaying softly like the lullabies of the wind. (14) Flannel cloth fairy hammocks. Imagine a hammock so small it could cradle a dream rather than a body. Strips of flannel cloth, once part of a worn-out shirt, are stretched gently between two rustic posts. The plaid pattern, faded but familiar, sways lightly in the breeze as though whispering the comfort of old memories. In this tiny scale, the hammock belongs not to people, but to imagination itself, to fairies resting after twilight dances, or to stories waiting to be told. It doesn't demand grandeur, only presence. The fabric, softened by time, seems to carry echoes of warmth, transforming what was once discarded into a cradle of wonder. Placed in a garden nook, surrounded by moss, flowers, and branches, the hammock becomes an anchor of whimsy. Its colors brighten the green around it, while its gentle sway invites us to pause, to breathe, to remember the quiet joy of slowing down. This humble piece tells us that comfort can be found anywhere, even in scraps of fabric reborn with care. It is less about scale and more about spirit, proof that the smallest gestures often hold the deepest peace. And as this hammock sways with invisible dreams, the next idea turns upward, where jars and tin cans sing in the breeze, chiming softly with rustic song. (15) Jar and Tin Can Wind Chimes. Close your eyes and listen. A soft breeze slips through the garden, carrying with it a song that no instrument could ever play. From jars and tin cans, once emptied and forgotten, comes a gentle chorus, each note born from the touch of wind on metal and glass. The jars catch the sunlight as they sway, scattering glimmers like droplets of light across the ground. The cans, painted in rustic shades or left with their honest patina, hum with earthy resonance. Together, they create a harmony both fragile and grounding, a melody that belongs entirely to the garden. There is a kind of joy in this transformation. Scraps that once held no purpose now carry music. Each chime is a reminder that beauty is not just seen but felt, not only crafted but discovered in moments of stillness and sound. Placed on a porch, along a path, or beneath a tree, the chimes turn every breeze into a performance. They remind us that nature itself is the conductor, and that what we discard may yet sing again. And as the wind carries this rustic song through the leaves, the list comes to a close, our final idea ringing with the timeless truth that trash, in the right hands, always becomes treasure. And there you have it. Trash turned into timeless magic for your backyard. Remember, beauty doesn't come from buying expensive things, but from seeing wonder in the scraps all around us. If today's ideas sparked your imagination, make sure to subscribe and come back next week. We'll keep creating together. Until then, may your garden always bloom with magic, and your hands never run out of treasure to transform.